Okay, so good morning and hello everyone. We are going to start with unit number, module number basically one only. We are continuing in that unit number 1.2, that is MOS physics. In that, we are going to start with today's topic, which is basics of a MOS capacitor or a MOS cap. Okay, so this parallel plate capacitor we have already seen before. So what it is made up of? It is made up of a metal, it is made up of an oxide, and it is again made up of a metal. Okay, so it is a MOM device basically, and these are the two leads. So basically this is the capacitor which we have already used. So what is the formula for this parallel plate capacitor? So it's given by C naught, and we know the capacitor unit is given by Farad. So what will be the formula for C naught? So I've told you all to keep a notebook and a pen and a calculator. So now is the time to write this formula. So I'll just make this arrangement wherein I can type. Okay, so let us see what is the formula for C naught. So C naught will be given by, so we have epsilon, then we have area. Epsilon is the dielectric constant, area is the area between the plates, and C naught will be epsilon A divided by D. It's a very, very important formula, and it is a unit of Farad, right? That's the formula for the plate capacitor. As I've written over here, epsilon is the dielectric constant, or the whatever the material is, it's dielectric constant. A is the area between the plates, and D is the distance between the two plates. Now, this is the fundamental formula for a capacitor. So kindly note that down in your notebooks. So if I have to change the capacitance value of a parallel plate capacitor, either I can change by changing the dielectric material, or I can change by changing the area. If the area changes, my capacitance will change. Or either I can also change the distance between the plate. So that can also change the capacitance value. Okay, so this concept, I think it is clear. So now let us move ahead. So please note down this formula. It's not there in the OneNote PDF. So C naught is epsilon A by D. Exactly similarly, we have a MOS capacitor. Now, what is the MOS capacitor? Like a parallel plate capacitor, a MOS capacitor is a two-terminal device. So it's M stands for metal, O stands for oxide. The blue color hash lines are oxide. This and this S stands for semiconductor, which is a silicon. Whether P-type or N-type, we'll see that very soon. So basically, you need to know is it's a two-terminal device. Okay, and here we have this line. If you see over here, this is the line which is called as SiO2 interface, and that also has its significance. The oxide is basically made up of silicon dioxide, SiO2, and metal can be aluminum or polysilicon. We'll talk about that. Okay, so this is all called MOS capacitor, metal oxide semiconductor, MOS capacitor, or short form we can call it as a MOS cap. Now, since it is a capacitor, it should also have its own formula. So we call it as COX. So this COX is called as gate oxide capacitance. Now it is slightly different than this the parallel plate capacitor C naught in the manner that its unit is farad per centimeter square. That means what? This capacitance is gate oxide capacitance is capacitance per unit area. Now let's understand that by the formula. So COX formula, please write it down. So we have over here, let me just take this aside. Okay. So let me take my pen and write the formula for COX. So gate oxide capacitance COX is given by epsilon OX. We'll talk about that. Just note down that formula in your notebooks. Epsilon OX upon TOX. We'll discuss every term over here. Okay. So this is the formula for the gate oxide capacitance TOX, which is given by epsilon OX divided by TOX. So have you noted it down? I'll wait for 2 seconds. Okay, fine. Let me go back to the PDF. So over here, if you compare it with the earlier formula, CO has on A by D. Correct? So basically, what can I say over here? In this formula, this COX is basically COX divided by A, unit area. Okay. So basically, its unit will be farad per centimeter square because it is capacitance divided by the unit area. So that's the difference between your parallel plate capacitor and your MOS capacitor formula. Okay. And hence the unit is farad per centimeter square. Okay. So now let's see these things in details. What is epsilon OX? Epsilon OX is written by epsilon naught into epsilon R. Now, what is the value of epsilon R and epsilon naught? Now, epsilon naught, we know that it is the permittivity of free space. Okay. So I repeat, epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space. So let me write the value over here. Its value is not written. You all can also note it down. It's a very useful number. So this will be equal to, let me just go back to the, yeah. Okay, epsilon naught will be equal to 8.854 into 10 raised to minus 14. So if I want to write into 10 raised to minus 4, 10 raised to minus 14 means this, right? So it is 10e minus 14 means this only. So while I'll write 10e minus 14. It means 8.854 into 10 raised to minus 14 farad per centimeter. So that's the value of epsilon naught, which is the permittivity of the free space. Okay. And there is another number which is epsilon r. Now epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space. Epsilon r is the constant of SiO2. Remember, we are using here silicon dioxide, SiO2, as an oxide material. So hence we have to use the dielectric constant of SiO2. And this is called as relative permittivity. Okay. So epsilon R, we can also denote epsilon of SiO2, and its value is not given over here. Let us write that value over here. Okay, let me just extend this a little. Okay, fine. So now I am ready to write the values here. So we are writing over the value epsilon R. So epsilon R value is given by 3.97. Kindly note it down. 3.97. So these are the constants which are very useful. It will be used in many numericals which we are solving. So kindly write this numbers, the constants. Epsilon R is given by 3.97. If I can reduce this slightly. Okay, fine. So I hope that you all have written these numbers. So let us proceed further now. Yeah. So, and what is TOX? TOX is basically acting as a D, distance between the two plates, right? So let us see that a little further in a more systematic diagram. Okay. Let me reduce this slightly. I hope this simplified diagram of a MOS capacitor is visible. So it is a two-terminal device. The first terminal is called as the gate, which is the gate metal, and the second terminal is called as the substrate or the body terminal. Now it has one more name, bulk. So either we can call this as a substrate, which is called as capital B, or body. Okay. So what we know so far about the MOS capacitor, it is a two-terminal device and it is made up of metal. It is made up of oxide, silicon dioxide, SiO2, and it is also made up of a silicon substrate. Substrate is the silicon wafer that is called as the base or also called as the substrate. So this is the silicon substrate. Now we know that silicon substrate can be either p-type. Okay, if it is doped with trivalent impurities, it is p-type. If it is doped with pentavalent impurities, it is called as n-type silicon or extrinsic semiconductor. Okay, so this silicon substrate, either it will be p-type or n-type. Now let us realistically look into the materials now. So metal, you can use aluminum or polysilicon. Okay, so I'll just give you a hint over here. So usually metal is the gate terminal. Usually it is a aluminum. Now aluminum, all of us know it's a metal, and metal has plenty of electrons for conduction. Also we can use a polysilicon. Now polysilicon is a heavily doped semiconductor having a doping level of 10 raised to 20 per centimeter cube. That's considered to be very, very high doping. Now the substrate, the silicon substrate, it can be either p-type or n-type semiconductor. It is also called as the body or bulk silicon. Now oxide layer, I have already informed you all, it's usually SiO2 or silicon dioxide. Okay, now let's look into realistic how big is this MOS capacitor. Fine, so the width, the size, the width of the metal layer is 10 to 1000 nanometer. So if I want to convert into micrometer, it is usually 0.12 in the range of 0.1 to 1 micrometer. Your TOX I was talking about right in here, it is called as gate oxide thickness. Okay, so earlier we have said that C naught is epsilon A by D. Here it is COX is epsilon OX divided by TOX, where TOX is the distance between the two plates, right? So here it is the thickness of this oxide layer. So I repeat, we have learned one more term, TOX, which is nothing but the thickness of this oxide layer. Okay, so what's the typical thickness? This typical thickness can be between 10 to 200 angstroms. Now this is a new unit coming over here. I'll shortly describe what it means. Its value is between 10 to 200 angstroms. Typically I can consider to be 20 nanometer in case of today's modern technology node. And out of these three, the silicon substrate is very big. So you can compare it, it's around 300 micrometer. So is the range of silicon substrate, I have not drawn this to scale, 300 micrometer compared to 20 nanometer will be quite big. Okay. So basically 300 micrometer to 500 micrometer is my silicon substrate width. Okay. So now let us look into two more constants. We have 1 micrometer and 1 angstroms. So see, everything in this particular subject you have to convert into centimeters. Okay. So what is 1 micrometer? So we can write, let me just open up this. Okay. So we can write over here 1 micrometer is equal to, I'm only directly writing the answer. Okay. 1 micrometer is equal to, I'm writing 1 micrometer is equal to 10 raised to minus 4 centimeters. So I'm writing 10e minus 4 centimeter. Okay, so please remember that. And what is 1 Armstrong? So 1 Armstrong is given by, so 1, I'm just writing A, this, but you have to write it this way. 1 Armstrong is given by 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter. So 10 raised to minus 8, how will I write? 10e minus 8 centimeter. So please kindly note down these two constants also. So 1 micrometer is given by 10 raised to minus 4 centimeters and 1 Armstrong is given by 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter. Okay, so let us proceed further now. I hope that you all have noted it down. Okay, so next we go, yeah, we have seen this. MOS capacitor has two terminals, namely gate and, oh sorry, it should be written here capital G, and substrates and body should be capital B. So just correct it, this should be capital G. the oxide layer act as a dielectric. Yes, definitely. Anyone has a doubt? I guess no. I just got a notification. Anyways, I'll continue now. Okay, so let us see what we have done so far. So far we have seen what is a parallel plate capacitor, which is a MOM structure. We have also seen the structure for a MOS capacitor. The short form is MOSCAP. We have seen the formula of COX, which is the gate oxide capacitance. Its unit is farad per centimeter square, a very important parameter. We have also seen what's the definition for epsilon naught, what's the value of epsilon naught, and epsilon r, which is the dielectric constant of SiO2. And we have seen that what are the materials used for metal, substrate, and oxide layer. And we have seen their typical dimensions and two constant values, 1 micrometer and 1 angstrom. Now, let us go to the fact key why study this MOS capacitor. So, the MOS capacitor is important device for several reasons. I'll read out only the second and the third point. First point you can read out only. So, studying MOS capacitor because it is an important test structure used to obtain useful information about the MOS, particularly a MOS transistor. So basically, before directly going into MOS transistor, which is your MOSFET, studying MOS capacitor is a must because it will let down the foundations for your MOS transistor. Okay, MOS capacitor itself is an important semiconductor device, right? It is used in charge coupled devices, analog circuits, and memories, and so on. Okay. Now, I have talked about this silicon dioxide interface, right? Remember? So I've talked about this particular interface line over here. It's my silicon dioxide interface. Does it have any significance? Yes. Now, here I've written 2 points. It is the most common semiconductor insulator system used in MOS device. So it was the outstanding properties of SiO2 interface which has made silicon technology dominant today. So if you go and look into the technology, which technology is being adopted worldwide, we have silicon still dominant. Now, let me talk about something over here now. Very important concept. See, usually the metal doping, the doping concentration is 10 raised to 20 per centimeter cube. Now, similarly, substrate also is made up of silicon, right? So it will also have some doping. Usually, the doping of p-type silicon or n-type silicon is quite less compared to your polysilicon. So maybe in the range of 10 raised to 16 or 10 raised to 17 or 10 raised to 18. 18 is very high. Let's consider 10 raised to 16. That means we have a doping concentration difference between the metal and the substrate. Correct? So a very important concept coming up. So the doping in the gate, that is the metal gate, is different from the doping in the substrate. Because of that, what happens? There exists a contact potential between the metal gate and the silicon substrate. We will elaborate this point very soon. Right now, you just listen. Have some patience. We'll come back to this point very with the help of energy band diagrams. Okay. So there is a contact potential existing between the metal gate and the silicon substrate because of their doping level differences. Okay. So this contact potential between the metal gate and the silicon substrate is represented by work function difference, psi naught, psi w. Okay. So we will phi w, sorry. So we will come back to this work function difference. This concept will again, we'll come back to it when we'll study semiconductors with the help of energy band diagrams. Okay, so we'll come back to it. Now, a minute or so, I want to dedicate to silicon dioxide. Why silicon dioxide is a good choice for use in MOS devices. So there are around 10 points. I'll highlight the points which are extremely important. So there are 10 advantages of silicon dioxide which makes silicon very, very useful. Okay, so first of all, silicon dioxide forms an ideal interface with silicon. So producing very, very few defects. See, silicon dioxide is a dielectric material, it's an insulator. But insulators also might have some defects inside it because it's a crystalline structure, correct? So it's basically it's an amorphous crystal structure. Silicon dioxide is an amorphous crystal structure. So crystal structure can have defects, but SiO2 crystal structure have very few defects because interfacing with silicon will produce very few defects. Now silicon dioxide, nevertheless, it's a very obvious property. It is a very good insulating property. It's very evident from its resistivity. Its resistivity is 10 raised to 17 ohm centimeter. So that's the resistivity of DC resistivity of silicon dioxide. Now, silicon dioxide has a very good dielectric strength. Dielectric strength. Okay, it is around 10 raised to 7 volts per centimeter. So it can withstand very high electric fields. That's the meaning of high dielectric strength. And it has a relatively very wide band gap. We'll come back to this band gap. 8.9 electron volt. In short, what it means is such values or such numbers will make sure it is an excellent insulator. And well, remaining points, I guess y'all can go through them. Y'all can go through them. I'll share this with y'all. I have mentioned out the important parameters. Okay. Now get ready for your numerical number 1. So please, everyone, concentrate on this numerical number 1. So the numerical says if gate oxide thickness is 500 angstroms. Remember 500 angstroms unit? 500 angstroms for a MOSFET. Calculate the gate oxide capacitance, and secondly find the capacitance if the plate area is 1 micrometer into 1 micrometer. Come on, everyone, take your notebooks out, take your pens out, and take your calculator out. So come on, start. So we are going to use the formula which we have just studied just few minutes ago. So TOX is given by, please write down in your notebooks, is 500 angstroms, which is equal to 500 into 10 is to minus 8 centimeter. Correct? Now, we know the formula for epsilon OX upon TOX. Come on, epsilon OX, what's the everyone? So epsilon OX will come back over here. We have two values over here, right? Epsilon OX is epsilon naught into epsilon R. So these are the two numbers. Multiply them fast. Come on. Everyone, you have to work along. See, this subject of VLSI can be studied thoroughly if you solve many numericals, so that we can have a actual feel ki what's the value, typical value of a COX. Okay, gate oxide capacitance. Now, so you have these numbers with you. 8.854 into 10 is to minus 14. Epsilon R is 3.97 and TOX is 500 into 10 is to minus 8 centimeter. Come on, write the value, write the answer value in your meeting chat. You can easily write that. I'll wait for around half a minute. You can write your answers in the chat box. I'll no doubt I'll provide the answer, but for that you have to work out a little. Take your calculators out and do the multiplication of 8.854 into 10 is to minus 14. Excellent, excellent. I am getting the answers. It's around the numbers I will just disclose in a minute. Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. Okay, so the answer which you are looking for is, if you are getting it correctly, it should be 70.3 into 10 raised to 9. 70.3 into 10 raised to minus 9. So all of you are getting correct answers. Now, we can also write this as follows. 70.3, you know 10 raised to minus 9 is also called as nano. So you can write 70.3 nanofarad per centimeter square. Okay, so that's the unit which we are right. COX is, the correct answer is 70.3 nanofarad per centimeter cube. Now remember the unit. As soon as you see COX, you write as nanofarad per centimeter square. Now, the second question is, find the total capacitance if the plate area is given. Now, what does that mean? That means the area is given to you and they are asking you total capacitance. Now, total capacitance means what? Area into COX. Correct? So come on, find out the value of area. See, this is in micrometer. We have to convert into centimeter square. Everyone, I'll directly give you the answer, but I want you all to try. Find out the value of Cg. What is the value of Cg? A into COX. COX we already know. Area. So what will be area? It will be 1 micrometer into 1 micrometer. What is 1 micrometer? 10 raised to minus 4 centimeter. So area will be 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter square. Correct? So area will be 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter square. Or we can write centimeter into centimeter. So this is the area A. Multiply this number with COX. What's the value of CG everyone getting? CG value. Type in the meeting chat. Come on, use your calculators. Yes, correct. The values which some of you all have wrote is correct. It's around, okay, I'll wait for 5 seconds more. Yes, absolutely correct. Yeah, yeah, correct. Yes, yes, all of you all are giving correct answers. So the number is 703 e raised to minus 18. Yeah, some of you all are getting 7.03 e minus 16. That is also correct. Now, I've introduced you to a new unit, 10 raised to minus 18. I think you know what is nanofarad, correct? You know also picofarad, right? You know what is 10 raised to minus 15? Femtofarad. What is 10 raised to minus 18? Attofarad. Attofarad. So I can write here easily as 703 attofarad. So that's the number which you're looking for. All your answers are correct. Okay. So we have completed this numerical and we have got the numbers. So COX was coming out to be 70.3 nanofarad per centimeter square and CG is coming out to be 703 attofarad. We have learned one more new unit, attofarad, 10 is to minus 18. Okay, fine. So let me ask if we have completed the contents of this OneNote PDF. That is lecture number 2A. If you all have any doubt, let me know right now. You all can raise your hands, or if it is no doubt, I can continue further. I'll wait for 5 seconds. If you have a doubt, you can raise your hand and ask your doubts, or else I can proceed. So we'll take a quick break of biological break of 10 seconds and we'll move on. So turn away your eyes from your screen. Don't constantly stare at it. Just close your eyes for 10 minutes and relax. Very soon we are starting with a different topic. Just close your eyes for a few more seconds. That will give you a lot of relaxation. Okay, one of you have asked a doubt. Epsilon R is 3.97, not 79 for the clarity. One of you have asked it out. Okay, fine. So very good. You can open your eyes and let us start with a new topic. So it's 3.97. Correct. Correct. So we are going to start with 2B. So let us start. I hope that biological break of 10 seconds was useful. Now, this is just a bit of revision kind of, which already all of you all knew this topic. Let me adjust the screen size so that it's clearly visible to you. Okay, it's it's 45. I guess I can fit the screen with 40. Yeah. So I guess semiconductors, this is just your 12th standard or 11th standard physics. We have two types, a pure silicon or impure silicon in layman's language, correct? So over here we have pure silicon, we can call it as an intrinsic semiconductor. Now what do you mean by intrinsic semiconductor? N. What is N? N is the electron concentration. What is P? P is the hole concentration. What is Ni? Ni is the intrinsic carrier concentration. So if it is an intrinsic semiconductor, the number of holes and the number of electrons are same. Their concentration are the same. And intrinsic semiconductor, well, you will see ki where they are used. Yes, pure silicon is definitely used. It is called as electronic grade silicon, EGS. Now, EGS, electronic grade silicon, has a purity of 99.999, I don't know how many nines are there, percentage pure. That means it has 1 ppm, 1 part per million impurity. Okay, in 1 million parts we have 1 impurity. That's what the meaning is. Now, any one of you, write down in your chat box what's the atomic concentration of silicon. Come on, I'll give you the answer, no doubt. But if anyone can guess the value of atomic concentration of silicon. Any one of you? You remember? What's the atomic concentration of silicon? Okay. No. Atomic concentration. Concentration means how many silicon atoms are there in a crystal structure. Hello, sir, I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. So I have saved this file. Let me open a new one so that I can write, and I'll share this paint wala thing also. Okay. So the atomic concentration of silicon, enough with the suspense. Now let me write over here 5 into 10 raised to 22. See the per centimeter cube. So per centimeter cube, how many silicon atoms are present? That is the number which you're looking for. All of y'all were way off. It's not around 4 or something or 8 or something. No. It's around how many number of silicon atoms are present per centimeter cube. The number is very huge. It's 5 into 10 raised to 22. Okay, I hope that you have noted that down. Okay, let us come back to impure silicon. Um, Impure silicon, also we can call it as an extrinsic semiconductor. We have two types of it, N-type silicon and P-type silicon. N-type silicon are made up of group 5 elements, group 5 materials, and what are they called as? They are called as pentavalent impurities. Now what are they? They are nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, and antimony. Okay, remember them. They will be useful. Now, we also have a donor impurity. Now, N-type silicon have 5 valence electrons, so it can donate 1 valence electron. So hence they are called as donor impurity. These are denoted by Nd. Nd. These Nd means number of donors per centimeter cube, and its value is 10 raised to 16 per centimeter cube. Now see the contrast in number. I will tell you something over here now. Silicon atoms, pure silicon atoms are 5 into 22, 5 into 10 is to 22. And number of donor atoms are 10 is to 16. Means what? Means out of silicon, out of 5 into 10 is to 22 silicon atoms, 10 is to 16 silicon atoms are replaced by impurity atoms, which can be phosphor atoms. Okay, that's the meaning of the statement. Okay, p-type impurity, p-type silicon. We have here, what is the meaning of N greater than P? That means N-type silicon has electron concentration very much higher as compared to hole concentration. And p-type silicon has hole concentration greater than your electron concentration. Or we can easily say N-type material have electron as majority carriers and holes as minority carriers. Similar thing goes for your p-type silicon, holes as majority carriers and electron as minority carriers. Now, P-type silicon have a trivalent impurities. These are boron, aluminum, gallium, indium. I have written their full forms as well as their their representation in letters. Okay, so these impurities, trivalent impurities, have 3 valence electron. They require one, so they are called as acceptor impurities, denoted by the symbol Na. Na is represented by number of acceptors per centimeter cube, and again the ratio is around 10. The number is around 10 is to 16 per centimeter cube. Okay, so this doping concentration which I was talking about, it can be in the range of 10 is to 14 to 10 is to 19 per centimeter cube. Fine. I hope that this point is clear. If you have any immediate doubt, you all can type in the meeting chat. Now let us go back to a second concept for this topic. We will be discussing 3 concepts. Type of semiconductor is over. Next is law of mass action, and next is Fermi direct distribution function, and that will be it for lecture number 22B. Okay, so let us see what is law of mass action. I am sure that you might have heard of it. It's called, as its statement is, it means equilibrium concentration of mobile carriers in semiconductor always obeys the law of mass action. Now, I am not written here what's the law of mass action, and we are going to write that. So what does this mean is, this means the following. So law of mass action says the product of electron concentration I'm denoting by N, multiplied by the product of hole concentration is given by Ni square. Ni square. Please write that down. It's a very important law of mass action. Now it says that Ni, we know its intrinsic carrier concentration. What is N? Electron concentration. And P is the hole concentration. So this is the law of mass action. Okay, I hope that, yeah. Now very, very important point. They are saying that this law of mass action is valid for intrinsic semiconductor. It is also valid for extrinsic semiconductor. Now let me give you a more detail. So can you remember this simple thing? Product of N into product of P is equal to Ni square. Okay. So let me go back now. So N into P is equal to Ni square. So this is valid for intrinsic semiconductor and extrinsic semiconductor. Now for intrinsic semiconductor, N and P are same. So obviously your hole and electron concentration is same. So that means what if both of them are same, N into P, if you multiply, you will get Ni square. Very obvious. So it's very, very valid for your intrinsic semiconductor. How it is valid for extrinsic semiconductor? It is valid for that also. So there, in case of extrinsic semiconductor, you can have majority carriers as electron and minority carriers as holes. Yes, that also means that the majority carriers, that is N, and the minority carriers, that is P, in N-type silicon is also equal to Ni square. This is what do you mean by law of mass action. The concentration of the product of your electron concentration in the conduction band and the hole concentration in the valence band is a constant, and that number constant is equal to Ni square. Okay. So what is Ni? Ni is the intrinsic carrier concentration of silicon at T equal to 300 degree Kelvin. Now I hope that you know what is Kelvin, right? So T equal to 300 degree Kelvin means it's 27 degrees Celsius. Okay, 27 degrees Celsius is equivalent to 300 degree Kelvin. So I hope that this point is clear. Now let's write some useful constants. Okay, so we have described Ni, we have described Ni square, and their values should be known to us, correct? So let us write down their values over here. So all of y'all also please write down the values. So these are very important constants which will be used more than often. Okay. Let me just take the, yeah. So the value of Ni is given by 1.45 into 10 is to 10. Okay. In some books, it is given 1.5 into 10 is to 10. It is same actually. Actually, it's the same. Its unit is per centimeter cube. Okay. So please remember that. And the value of Ni square, that is Ni into Ni, is given by 2.1 into 10 is to 20. Okay. So please write down these values. Ni square is 2.1 into 10 is to 20. And Ni value is 1.45 into 10 is to 10. I hope that you have written the numbers. Okay. Now, let us see few more things. Okay. Do you see this energy band diagram? Yes, I guess. You might have not seen this for the first time. So in this energy band diagram, okay, yeah. In this energy band diagram, basically, if we are not deliberating so much in details, we have your conduction band. It's a band, right? So this is called as a top of conduction band, and this is my bottom of my conduction band, which is denoted by EC. Basically, we only draw a line, but basically it's a band, and we have a valence band. Okay, so electrons are mostly more often found in the conduction band, and holes are more often found in the valence band. Okay, so valence band is also a band. So we have a bottom of the valence band denoted by EV bottom and EV top. It is basically this. The difference between your EC and your EV, that is EC bottom and your EV top, is called as your EG, which is the band gap energy. Okay, it is the band gap energy. And what is this E denoted by with the arrow upwards? It indicates the electronic energies increasing levels. See, these are electronic energies, and electrons have a negative charge. Remember this very carefully. Electron have negative charge, and these are increasing electronic energies. Okay, so if an electron at a higher energy, that means it is at the conduction band, that means it is having a higher energy. And energy, and x is my distance. Okay, energy is always calculated in joules, correct? So when we write 1 electron volt, what does that mean? Now this 1 electron volt is also very important unit. So we'll write that down also. So 1 electron volt, let me just go back to this. Okay, so we write electronic energy 1 electron volt is given by, you can write it down, 1.6 into e raised to minus 19 joules. Okay, so this is 1 electron volt energy. It's not voltage, it's energy. 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 joules. So write this very important, again a constant or a conversion we can say. Okay, I have exceeded my time, but I will like to finish this. Okay, fine. I hope that you have noted it down. So 1 electron volt. So this EG is my band gap energy. I missed out a word over here. Band gap energy. It is also measured in electron volt. Okay, and the T I've already told you 300 kelvins means 27 degrees Celsius. So 0 degrees means 273 Kelvin. Okay. So why does EG is important? Band gap energy. And I want to give you some numbers Ni. For germanium, this band gap energy is 0.66 electron volt, and Ni concentration is 2.5 into 10 is to 13. For silicon, anyone remembers what's the band gap energy for silicon? You can type in the meeting chat. Band gap energy for silicon. Come on. Acha, in the meanwhile, for gallium arsenide, a compound semiconductor, the band gap energy is 1.43 electron volt, and Ni is 10 is to 6 per centimeter cube. Okay. For silicon, Ni we already know. Ni is 1.45 into 10 is to 10 per centimeter cube. What is band gap energy? So the band gap energy for silicon, I can write it as Eg, is given by 1.12 electron volt. Please note this number down. Is the band gap energy, the difference between the conduction band and the valence band for a silicon. And for a majority of our syllabus, we are going to stick on to silicon. So it's very important to know its band gap energy. The value is 1.12 electron volt. That's the number which you have to note down. And Ni we already know. Ni for silicon it's 1.45. So it's a very, very important observation over here, correct? Now, why do we prefer silicon over germanium? The reason being the leakage current in silicon is much lesser as compared to germanium. In silicon, the leakage current is in the order of 10 raised to minus 9 amperes, that is nanoamperes. And for germanium, the order of the leakage current, you remember a leakage current diode, reverse bias, we have a leakage current. That leakage current I'm talking about. So for silicon, that leakage current is very less, 10 is to minus 9. And for germanium, that leakage current is very, very little bit higher, around 10 is to 3 times higher. It's in microamperes. That's why one reason is we prefer silicon over germanium. Okay. Another, we know the difference between the three now. So again, I repeat, the band gap energy for silicon, silicon, it's 1.1 electron volt. Okay. I hope that this is true. Now, last is Fermi Dirac. I have 2 minutes with me. I'd like to finish it faster. So we have a Fermi Dirac distribution function, f of e. So what does it tell you? It tells you that what's the probability of finding an electron at the Fermi level. I mean, with this, the concept of Fermi level concept has come. EF, Fermi level. So that formula is given by f of e is given by 1 divided by 1 plus e raised to e minus ef divided by kt. Okay. Among this, E is the energy level, EF is the Fermi energy level, and K is the Boltzmann's constant. Okay. Now, since f of E is a probability, so probability is always between 0 and 1, correct? So either it can be 0, or it can be 1, or it can be between 1 and 0. So probability of finding an electron can be 0%, or probability of finding an electron at the Fermi level can be 100% also. So f of E, we have kT is the thermal energy. T is the temperature in Kelvin. Okay, we'll quickly describe this now. Okay, let me just slightly minimize this. Just 2 more minutes, I'm finishing this. Okay, so f of e probability. If let's consider at t equal to 0 degree Kelvin. Okay, so if I consider if E is equal to EF, that means e raised to 0, right? And what is e raised to 0? 1. Correct. So 1 upon 1 plus 1, that is half. So at f equal to f at f, E equal to EF, okay, what is my probability of finding the electron? Half. It is 0.5. This EF is called as the Fermi energy level. It is the energy level at which the probability of finding the electron is 0.5. So you have understand, if E is equal to EF, that means this E raised to 0 it will become, it will be 1 upon half. So probability of finding the electron at Fermi energy level is half. Okay, at E equal to EF. Now, if E, which is the energy level, is very much greater than EF, then we can say very much greater means your E minus EF will be positive number. So 1 upon E raised to E positive number divided by 0. You know, T is 0 Kelvin. So it will be E raised to infinity. So this number will be 0. Okay. So your probability of finding the electron will be 0 if your energy level is very much far away than EF. Okay. And if energy level is very much lesser, if it is lesser than EF, that means very, very close. It means that means this number E raised to E minus EF, that will be negative, right? And divided by 0. So that number will be 1 upon 1 plus E raised to minus infinity. So that number will be 1. That means the probability of finding an electron for E less than or equal to EF, that will be 100%. Okay. So this is the Fermi Dirac distribution function. On the y-axis we have energy levels. On the x-axis we have your probability. That is 0 to 0.5. What I quickly want to show you all is, we have this red color curve which is a constant line. We have this orange color curve which is for temperature TA. We have this red color which is for temperature 0 degree Kelvin, and blue color curve is for 300 degree Kelvin. What does it tell you? See, as we are increasing the temperatures, what is happening? Your probability of finding an electron is, let's consider this energy level E1. Okay. So here the probability of finding the electron over here is 0. And as we go on increasing the temperature, the probability of finding the electron goes on increasing. Okay. So we have marked here the probability of finding the electron at 300 degree Kelvin is P1. And for probability of electron at TA degree Kelvin is called as P2. So as you can clearly see over here, P2 is having a higher probability compared to P1, and this 0 is indicating this level only. Okay. Similarly, and this E1 is greater than EF. Huh? So your probability will be closer to, as we can say, closer to 0 side. And when EF, this is EF level, right? And let's say we have a E2 energy level. So now the probability of finding the electron at a temperature 0 degree Kelvin is 1. Okay. Here it is 1. For 300 degree Kelvin, it is P1 dash. And for P2 dash, that is at TA degree Kelvin, it is P2 dash, correct? So here what we say, the probability of finding an electron at E2 energy level decreases with increase in temperature. Okay. So this is what do you mean by a Fermi direct distribution function. It is very, very helpful. Basically, it is signifying the importance of your Fermi energy level. Okay, so this is what I wish to cover for today's topic. So we have covered the types of semiconductors, law of mass action, and Fermi direct distribution function. Now, any of y'all, if you have any doubts, y'all can ask. I'll stop with the recording.